the New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain, and fantastic to have Sulabh Sharma joining us from Debut in New Zealand. Welcome along. How are you?
Thanks, Paul. Good, thank you.
Yeah, great to have you joining us. I hear this is your first podcast appearance.
Yep.
What a privilege. Well, exciting. Maybe you can give listeners just a quick overview of where you fit into the big wide world of tech in New Zealand.
Sure. Sulabh Sharma, co-founder at Debut. We are building digital-only bank in New Zealand. Disclaimer, we are not a bank yet. And my past career, my life, I've been in digital products, both in banking and insurance, and has been working on some really cool customer journeys and stuff. So, and a couple of years ago, started this Debut journey.
Great. Oh, great to have you on the show, Sulabh. Well, let's jump in. Of course, a big thank you to our show partners, 1NZ, Spark, HP, and Gorilla Technology. Now, a bit we want to get through today, definitely, keen to get into that world of digital banking, the neobank. What does that look like? What should it look like for New Zealand? But also a few other topics. There's been a bit of a push to move New Zealand forward on this kind of, right to repair, as it's often referred to, and then some big topics on the international front. What's happening with voice assistants actually getting smart and using AI. What's happening in the world of social media as it relates to, I guess, government-led content moderation and blocking. So we had some new information through from Mark Zuckerberg, sort of, I guess, admitting that they did some stuff that maybe they're not so proud of now over the last few years. And also we've seen X or Twitter banned in Brazil. So yeah, some interesting movements and then some flow-ons of these things. So let's jump straight in. I think let's start on the New Zealand front, where we've seen really this push to move New Zealand forward when it comes to a right to repair. We've seen Consumer New Zealand delivering a petition, to Parliament to really encourage introduction of repairability labels on technology and appliances that consumers buy. But it's I guess if you sort of step back and look at the bigger picture, and of course we've got there are moves in Parliament. The Green Party are suggesting a kind of an amendment to the Consumer Guarantees Act or bill down this track as well. Around giving Kiwis that ability to repair their own devices and appliances. But we've seen some of this on an international basis, and there tend to be sort of multiple aspects to it, from the way that gadgets and technology and appliances are kind of built. Some of them aren't necessarily built in a way where they're easy to repair. In other cases, it's, can consumers get access to the right tools and the right parts to get into things?
Yeah.
I remember, way back as a youngster, there used to be this tool called a Mac opener to be able to get into the very, very early Macs. It's this big, long kind of like a screwdriver type thing on one end, but it needed to be really, really long to get into the back of a Mac. So most people didn't have access to the right tool, and then it didn't just have a screwdriver, typical flat or Phillips thing on it. So this was the device you'd buy to get into your Mac, and so it became only a limited number of people would have access to that to be able to get in there. So these things have been going on for a long time. Of course, we've also had a lot of things get sort of smaller and more shrunk down, which makes it harder to repair. What sort of technology do you use, and how do you feel around
Apple, definitely.
Yeah.
And to your story, Apple has always been like that a little bit, where
bit of a challenge.
bit of challenge.
Yeah.
But I guess it's like it helps moving from that consumer economy to more circular economy, where things can be circulated back in stuff, and as much as can be rotated, can be circulated. I'll be very keen on understanding exactly what percentage of sort of waste is happening because of what kind of thing. Is appliances the main reason, or is it kind of the electronic device and stuff? Because these phones are, I guess, Apple has been on a journey as well. You can see with every WWDC, there is more and more they are doing now to make phones more circular and green. So it's good to know where the problems are. Kind of if we apply the first principles and just understanding. And then modularity is one thing. Again, you want to keep people safe as well, so not everyone starts tinkling with everything out there. So how things can be more modular and exchangeable. So if something breaks, you can pull it out, and and if you remember, Google put out a design for a modular phone once. It went nowhere. but kind of the concept where especially for the large appliances where there's no other way to throw it away and buy another one. How can you do more modular? And it's all interesting.
Yeah. Look, and in some areas we see these sort of open source designs kind of floating around. The FPV, first person view drones. There's kind of these kind of standards that have gained some adoption, but there's so often the bigger manufacturers will have their way of doing something. There's completely no direct connection between I don't know say one washing machine manufacturer and another, right? It's like they've got their thing. They all want to be different and differentiate. That brings with it all sorts of issues. It's hard to get parts. It's hard to repair things, and most often, because the prices of appliances have come down as well. You got a dishwasher that's not working. Do you get it fixed? Yeah, if it's a high end dishwasher, sure. But I saw an ad this week for a dishwasher is $399. You think of that in terms of how much labor are you gonna get for below that figure if your dishwasher was failing. If you bought a $400 dishwasher, how likely are you to want to repair it unless you can easily do it yourself, and probably getting any parts for it if it needs anything at all complicated. That's probably pretty unlikely. And so there's definitely some genuine challenges there. There's the software side with a lot of these things that we've talked through in the past as well. Right through to our vehicles. So I think if you were to really try and design it, and I haven't seen anybody do this, but in theory, you'd kind of have a bit of a matrix, and different things would have different requirements on them from the manufacturer, and then there'd be some sort of a responsibility back to the manufacturer. I was in an Uber earlier on today, and it was a Havel vehicle from China. Other time in the day, an American electric vehicle, and you kind of look across these different brands, and they've each got differing commitments to how well their software is kind of going to get kept up to date, whether it's getting over the year updates and so on. And as more and more things get connected to Wi-Fi and internet in one form or another, then you need security updates and so on. So it's probably not a sort of simple cookie cutter
Totally, yeah.
approach to get a good result. So I'm kind of curious how this plays out. And of course, New Zealand is a smaller market, which is probably two sides to it. One, well, we maybe can't demand too much because manufacturers will just say, well, you're demanding that, and it doesn't fit with what we're doing or with what other countries are doing, then we'll stop selling our product in New Zealand if you went too far. On the flip side, as a smaller market, we can get in and we can kind of, put in place legislation that maybe encourages other countries to follow suit, and we can maybe get those things through a little bit quicker and easier, as long as maybe we have to balance expectations there.
Yeah, totally. I think if there's a small nudge towards the right direction, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Now, we've heard that Amazon's new voice assistant going forward is going to be using the technology from Anthropic. So they make the Claude, artificial intelligence models, which I think a lot of people find them to be really good. To find Claude to be very competitive with ChatGPT and so on. Obviously, there are variances, but it really seems as though Amazon, with this news that's come through from Reuters, it's something of an admission that getting generative AI, that is really good. And we're certainly, a long way off perfection when it comes to Gen AI, aren't we? But that's just quite hard to do. And so hence, they're putting aside their own technology. I think they've invested something like $4 billion US into Anthropic. Somewhat in parallel, I suppose you could say, or similar to Microsoft's sort of 10 billion into OpenAI.
Totally.
So this is interesting. The bit that is some ways has probably will catch people a little bit off guard is that it sounds like most likely, according to the what's been picked up by Reuters, is that Amazon are likely to be charging a monthly fee for this with their chat capability, certainly for what they're calling as their new remarkable version of Alexa. So I'm kind of curious how that ends up playing out, because Amazon have done very, very well with their smart assistants, and there's a lot of Alexas out there. Between them and Google, they've got the lion's share of kind of that market of those smart speakers. Although Apple are in there too, and we're not too far off. The initial launch of iOS 18 is going to be holding back with Apple Intelligence, as they're calling their AI suite. Apparently, it's not going to be quite there at launch, but coming soon after. So there's a lot coming through, but we've had these smart assistants for a long time. They've been really dumb, it seems like now, or maybe to get a good capability, you're going to have to front up with some cash.
Yeah. No, totally. I think, and definitely, Alexa at my home is definitely due for an upgrade. I wonder though one thing, which is with smart speakers, what's the scope of intelligence that you need for the conversations? Like I get on with the OpenAI app, ChatGPT app on my phone. There are plenty of questions that I ask now. Actually, I'll probably be using ChatGPT more than I use Google now. Because there's a large scope of interactions, conversation, information. But when you're at your home and you have the speaker sitting in your home, it's usually to interact with your entertainment, like play a music or play a show, or it's to interact with your home tech. And like how I'm wondering, it's not a huge. So I don't mind paying for ChatGPT, but I probably would mind paying for a very set number of instructions that I'm giving to a home intelligence speaker. Does it make sense? It's a little bit different. So I wonder what would happen when you make it charged, especially something that's just sitting there.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, Reuters, their story comes from they're saying interviews with 5 people with direct knowledge of the Alexa, strategy. So it's kind of, definitely off the records type stuff. So we don't have the full picture yet. I imagine there could easily be free versions and a bit of a mix. I mean, to that point, yes, that's how we tend to interact with our smart assistants today, but maybe more so because they're pretty dumb, right? It's like, if you're working with colleagues that don't know a particular thing, then or don't have expertise in a particular area, then you're less likely to sort of ask them about that. But if you've got a colleague who is really up with the play in a particular area that you're interested in, then hey, they become your go-to. And I think there's a level to which, if we've got the AI that is really really good, then you're more likely to lean in and have that conversation. And I'm curious how that does play out, what it looks like in the home of future. Yes, we can always go to our smartphones and use the ChatGPT or Claude or these varying tools directly on our phones. But there's that kind of whole live chat type aspect, which of course you get with your say a paid subscription to ChatGPT, and you can do that in the car over Bluetooth or whatever your scenario is, and kind of have that live chat with what can feel like the smartest people in the world on the other end. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that at all, to be fair, but certainly drawing from a big knowledge pool. So I'm kind of curious how this plays out.
Even third-party integration. Like we would love to have. Again, I think that space. This is all going in kind of good direction. So keen to see.
Now the next up, social media. So Mark Zuckerberg has said that during the height of COVID and so on, that they censored content that now in hindsight that they probably shouldn't have. He said they were under a huge amount of pressure to censor content during the pandemic, and really were pointing to the White House, the Biden administration, putting pressure on them to take down content. And I guess we've seen sort of variations on that in a number of situations. Not just with Meta, but certainly with Twitter, to varying degrees where they censored things. We've certainly seen some changes in terms of the way these platforms are run. And it's really interesting to hear Zuckerberg basically call out what happened previously in private. We didn't really know what was going on, other than probably there have been stories coming through, and certainly this has been one of the things that we've heard from X, that and I guess they had their Twitter files kind of where they unveiled a lot of what went on behind the scenes in the past days before the sort of recent change in ownership. And I think there's probably going to be quite mixed views around, what is the right approach to censoring stuff, and do you really want, governments to have, back channels into these platforms and having a lot of control where maybe it sits outside of the law, but also, how much do you want, legislation to be able to control what discussions are going to be had. I think there's certainly some complexities here, right?
Yeah, it's not that black and white. Yeah.
I was reading about X, and sounded like they under request from Indian government, they basically blocked over 200,000 accounts earlier on in the year, which sounds like a massive number, of accounts to block. Of course, when you look at social media platforms, of course, there are ways to sort of have bots, running accounts and so on. But yeah, that seems like, wow, that's a huge number of accounts to take off the air, as it were.
No, that's a kind of ongoing sort of debate, how open things are and how controlled things are. So yeah,
and I mean, I think in that case, it was like, okay, is this fair and appropriate, or is this really coming from the government to sort of quash views that maybe don't
totally. And how do you know?
don't align with theirs? And I think it's worse where there is no disclosure, where you don't know what's happening, and that sort of seems to be part of where we've had this latest pushback on X in Brazil, where we've got basically Musk saying, look, we've been asked to take down accounts, but and told that if we don't, then there's some really big consequences. But then on the flip side, the pushback is actually, in doing so, we would actually be breaking Brazilian law. So it's kind of like, it sounds like kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. That there's not there's not necessarily an easy option there, and you're obviously getting different messaging from each side. So from Brazilian side, where you've got you've got a judge who's said, hey, take these accounts down, they're spreading misinformation. But yeah, then you've also got, now it appears the same judge has done something that I think is probably very odd to most people. He's now holding Starlink, which is a completely different legal entity to X, accountable for some of his complaints around X, which seems like, ooh, yep, we've got a bit of a fight on our hands here between. Things are getting very personal, put it that way, and I don't know whether Musk is kind of out of his depth here, and whether what we're seeing now is a trend which is going to see social media platforms just shut down. Brazil's one of the sixth largest population in the world, so a very, very big market for X, and as of now they've been shut down, and I imagine either they never come back, or if they do, they come back sort of smaller, because people will have already migrated away to other platforms. So it is concerning, and I don't know how you get this stuff right. I'm not keen on, say, the Chinese approach, which is kind of like, hey, they completely control the messaging, and you either align with what the government wants, or you might disappear for a while, and all sorts of other kind of scenarios that can happen when you've got a regime of that sort of nature that has a very strong hold on people, and there isn't that democratic element to it, where government gets too heavy-handed, you get the boot. That's very different, and I think probably most of us would hope would still be pretty keen on democracy. And that does mean we've got to get things right from a free speech perspective, but there also do need to be need to be some limits, and
totally, and you have to put some guardrails in.
But I don't know how you get that stuff right. It seems to be kind of all over the place at the moment.
I don't know either.
There's
a concept of in the in the blockchain world, there's a concept of DAO. Have you heard that? Decentralized autonomous organization, which
That's
is
right.
more you're basically decentralizing the control of content and ownership, and basically, maybe that, but it's far in the future. Where it's not a very small number of people making decisions, rather a whole, decentralized kind of organization collaborating with each other to make a decision. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's an interesting thought, isn't it? And I mean, I think even with DAOs, we've seen we've seen some challenges in the past, right? Where
Totally. Yeah.
someone gets a little bit too much control through one mechanism or
Totally.
another, and suddenly you're in another challenging position.
Yeah.
So these things are really kind of easier said than done.
Yeah.
And but I think what is good is these things are being talked about. They're out in the open. There is a level, certainly within New Zealand, of us kind of being able to hear a reasonably broad story of backwards and forwards. I'm not that sort of excited around say the position that Brazil is in at the moment, where one whole platform is is completely shut down. I'm really curious how that plays out. It does seem as though X as a platform has been relied upon by a lot of people in Brazil. Fortunately, it's not the only platform, but if you've got a scenario where, let's say, all of the other social media players are being heavily controlled by a government that maybe isn't actually behaving in a democratic manner, then that becomes a problem. And I guess all of this ties into the fact that we've moved to some very dominant technologically enabled communications platform across the platforms across the planet, and that includes our big publishers, the Reuters, the BBCs, and all of these other kind of media outlets. And the same in New Zealand, we've got a sort of small number that we get most from, and a lot of our news comes from a small number of global players, be they social media outlets or international news outlets, you don't necessarily get the full story all the way along with these platforms, right? So
does it say any reason why this happened in Brazil?
I think, those that are interested, I think it is probably worth going into probably picking up a mix of the content to kind of get both sides, and some media will give you kind of a view on both sides. Some media will be kind of skewed in a kind of a more direction towards, say, Musk's viewpoint. Some will be more in the direction of the Brazilian judge's viewpoint. Both of them appear to be making some sense, and it's pretty hard to kind of get into, well, what's the reality, what's the full story. I think the thing that did jump out to me around what was happening here was just maybe that sort of personal nature, where we're seeing the criticism of the judge, in Brazil, and then the judge coming against not only Twitter or X, but then completely different legal entity with different sort of shareholdings and so on, and the commonality being that obviously Musk is the founder of Starlink, SpaceX, and so like, that's actually seems quite questionable. Like that's a very very odd thing to do from any sort of legal standpoint. I think we have legal structures in place. Different legal entities are different legal entities. You can't that just sort of seems way way off. I can understand, why somebody might do it, but I can't align that in terms of how you could legally go after a completely different entity with different shareholders and try and put that sort of pressure on. And it seems like Musk's sort of response is that, well, they're gonna possibly have to offer Starlink for free to keep their customers kind of online in the Brazil market. So fascinating. All right, so also the other thing I wanted to and tie it in, I guess, with that is the other social media platforms. So Blue Sky, had a real growth in users because that's effectively a very similar platform. You call it an X or a Twitter clone in its own way, although unique in terms of how it's decentralized, which brings with it some of its own challenges. But some real growth there because of that. And then one last thing before we sort of delve into the digital banking world. A headline that was on the BBC caught my attention, and this was around the stealing of voices, and the scenario we had this guy Paul Sky Lemon, who got a little bit of a shock. Him and his partner were driving down the road. They're listening to a podcast around strikes in Hollywood and how artificial intelligence might impact them, and as people doing voice content and voiceovers and so on, then they heard the voice, and it was actually his voice was coming through on this podcast. So when you talk about AI taking people's jobs away, this was the AI was literally being able to emulate his voice, and that certainly wasn't something that they kind of signed off on. So there's an interesting story there online of how this happened, and how they were this couple were basically paid to record some voice, apparently for research into speech synthesis. But they understood that was what it was, just a research project. And then as it got to a point where their voices were actually cloned, and people were able to make content in their voices.
Wow.
I guess this is the world we're in right now to a degree, right? Our content is that's online has got picked up in a lot of cases by the likes of OpenAI or search engines are pulling that data in, and then are using it from an AI context, and we don't really have kind of quite the perfect sort of legislation to cover every scenario, which is very common too. We've heard around AI kind of apparently going through and absorbing YouTube, and of Google sounding quite upset around this, but of course Google do exactly the same sort of stuff themselves. So we're not in a perfect world where people's content, their intellectual property, their research is maybe fully treated appropriately, and I think there's a degree to which we all advantage off this, but there are disadvantages for all of us as well,
and that makes it a harder problem. The kind of do you stop, or do you how do you balance it out? I guess it's just evolution of things. We'll have better systems, better marking, better certifications to avoid misuse of kind of original information and identity attributes like voice, face, etc. So, but I guess it's too early. Like, I mean, if you look at ChatGPT, it's just a couple of years. It actually became popular with the consumer. So it's very new in the journey, and regulation is not known to be moving that fast anyway with the tech. So, but I guess there will be provisions, and these risks are real risk. Even deep fakes are getting more and more.
It gets easier and easier to do these things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And often there is a level of legislation that is helpful, and then other areas where new legislation needs to be developed, but that doesn't necessarily come quickly if there's not something that's already an ideal fit. So well, let's dive into to your startup, into Debut. Sulabh, tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how you ended up on this journey.
No, I think I have the best job. So Debut is we are setting up a next-gen bank in New Zealand. We're still going through our application process and journey, so we are not a bank yet. And really, the real dream here is to just reimagine what bank means for Kiwis today, and what the kind of what bank and banking means for them. Just kind of change that. We have launched a product earlier this year, which is basically does three things. It's it's the only sort of FPOS/debit card that also gives you interest. There's no one that gives interest, only on your savings. No one gives on your current money or transactional money. So we challenge ourselves that why not? And that's one thing that the product does. The second thing it does is no fees when you're traveling and using Debut cards. So no FX fee, no spread, which means you're saving at least 3 to 5% on your international expenses. And the third thing, mainly what Debut app does today, is having more control on your online payments and subscriptions. So you can create a virtual card, any number of virtual cards, and you can delete them and use those cards for subscription that sometimes get really hard to manage. Like, and personally, I've paid for things that I just couldn't find a way to switch them off.
Yes, yeah.
So it gives you both things. It gives you more
That's
control
great.
on your subscription, but it also protects you, because you're not sharing your main card details everywhere online. It just helps you segregate, your kind of your cards to, and if there's anything goes wrong with any website, or you're on an unfamiliar website or not trusted completely, you can just use that virtual card and then delete it, and nothing will happen.
That's great. Yeah, really helpful. So tell us a little bit about who you've got backing you, and what you've raised, and what your team looks like.
Yeah, sure. So we are completely New Zealand owned and operated. We were backed by NZ VCs and angel investors. We are a very lean team of around 14 full-time and part-time, but all of us come from banking, digital banking, payments background, and we probably be a different kind of financial organization. We are, say, 65% tech and 35% finance. So although all of us have worked in building banking products and financial products in the past, so kind of that's the composition of team. We are completely remote, as a digital business should be. We have offices where we can come in and meet and do whiteboarding and this sort of stuff.
That's not remote. It's not remote.
No, but when we want to, it's
yeah.
not a necessity. It's more something we need to get together and work on. We can, but it's not. We have complete flexibility other ways.
Yeah, interesting. And I guess one of the challenges with attracting customers is that we're so used to traditional banks, and we all feel, reasonably safe when our money is in a traditional bank. There's that mindset of, hey, if the money's in the bank rather than, um, you know, under your mattress, as we used to, say in years gone by, then that's a sort of, safe place to have it. I think at times it's like, well, this is a little startup. How do we know they're still going to be around? If I put some money in there, how much risk is it at, and so on. So just walk us through, how you give people confidence around, around their funds if they would decide, all right, going to do all my banking through Debut from now on. Or within the limits of what's possible, as you're not a full bank at this point in time, but yeah, there's some compelling reasons why folks might really want to get behind and support you. How does that look from a risk perspective?
Yeah, let me answer that question in two parts. The first part, it's very interesting that you say in New Zealand people have that sort of mindset, and that's right. There's billions of dollars sitting in banks, basically making nothing for consumers, and people losing money on their on-call accounts and transactional accounts. But if you look at other markets, if you look at UK, Brazil, India, Australia, things have moved on. There are more payment wallets today in the world, 4 billion, compared to bank accounts, which is 2.4 billion. So I think there's a whole, and again, those payment companies would have started with same challenges and same sort of same sort of expectations in the market, that why do I park my money in something like Paytm or whatever, Revolut in the UK, or Monzo. But then over time, it's the relationship that you build with the customer, and that brings me to the second part of the the question, where until we become a fully licensed bank, we don't even expect people to bring all their life savings with us. We expect them to get the value that they can get today, which is save on your FX, don't lose money, don't lose value of your transactional money to inflation, don't get ripped on online by using your main card. So I think it's how banking can be sliced and diced in so many layers, and there is a relationship you have to build with the customer. The problems we are solving today, we only expect people to hold that much value with us. And as we prove ourselves and as we grow and get licensed, it's a separate question, that is money parked in your banks completely safe? But that's how we have all grown up. And but yeah, so as the deposit scheme comes in, the regulation gets a little bit more evolved in New Zealand. Your money is actually safe sitting in a bank, and Debut will catch up with the license as well. We will obviously expect and to build up more financial relationships. But right now, let's just start small and go with kind of let's just solve some specific problems that we solve today.
Yeah. And there must be some guidance you have to operate in terms of separation of funds and
totally,
and things like that, right?
Totally. So yeah. It's very strict. It's people's money. There's no nonsense there. It's we operate as a very independently kind of managed trust, and then that's where the people's money is held. And yeah, so all of that is in place. We are working towards upgrading our regulatory status so we can be, it obviously comes with a lot of work, but that's where we see we can really make a difference in terms of the services we provide to through Debut.
Yep. Oh, that's that's really interesting. And so for folks who are interested in maybe experimenting, and our listeners tend to be the sort of people that want to keep at the forefront of what's going on and get a handle on these sorts of things, for all sorts of reasons. What does it look like to get up and running with with Debut? How easy is it to get set up? And what should we all know?
Yeah, you download the app, you are set up within 5 minutes. Everything is online and digital. You issue your card instantly. It's powered by MasterCard.
Yep.
So we have a debit card which works everywhere where MasterCard is accepted, which is basically everywhere.
Yeah.
And you can add to Apple Wallet or Google Wallet, and you're good to go. You basically, from the moment you download the app to the moment you can walk in a cafe and buy your first coffee, it should take you less than 10 minutes. A lot of people are parking their transactional money with Debut because, again, they're not losing the value of their money to inflation to buy day-to-day groceries and transport and coffees and lunch and that sort of stuff. That's kind of, and then the other area where people, where we're getting a lot of response back from our community and customers is, traveling overseas. So if you're traveling overseas, you can really save some money on exchange fee and commissions and stuff, which is usually the cost with big banks.
Yep. So how does that work with your phone, walking into a store overseas and using your Debut account? How does that work?
Just so again, thinking from the user experience, it is very simple. You're just making a transaction as you would do with any other card. We'll take care of the exchange rate. So that's the exchange rate, basically powered by MasterCard. So it's one of the best rates. It's even.
So you give people a physical card.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah. So no. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because you're mentioning putting it into wallets on the phone and so on.
You
can.
Yeah. Yeah, but you'll be surprised how, like in New Zealand, you still need card, other issues, but you'll surprise, the tap actually works. At a lot of places in Europe and Australia. Yeah, so you can order plastic anytime after you have set up your account and yeah.
Yep. That's good. And what sort of hoops are there in terms of you proving identities and things like that? What do you get people to to jump through? Obviously there's some regulations there and
totally
and so on. You want to keep things above board. So how complicated is that?
Yeah. So I've been involved in digital identity for a long time in my last work and career, and let me answer your first question. So it's very easy. You just need your New Zealand driver's license or your passport and your face or yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
Basically, you scan your document and you look in the camera for literally 2 seconds, and that's how we onboard customers. And right now we only support New Zealand documents. We'll be opening up more documents like international passports in the future.
And what do you do with that? Because we so often get asked for copies of passports or driver's licenses and so on. All around the world. I did a booking recently for some international travel, and a portion of the accommodation is an Airbnb, and they're saying, "Oh, we need a copy of of your documents," and I'm thinking, well, what's some random Airbnb owner going to do with my documents, right? Obviously, as a fintech entity, you've got a lot more weight on that sort of thing.
Yeah, totally.
So walk us through a little bit of how that looks.
Yeah. So as any financial institute involved in payments and stuff, you have to be very specific and particular about anti-money laundering and other things. So the KYC, which is basically onboarding, where
know
your customer, helps us comply with the AML regulation and make sure that the person who is using Debut is a legitimate person. And it doesn't stop there. It's an ongoing process where we definitely, within our bounds, we definitely have to make sure that nobody is actually misusing the system.
So what sort of data do you have to kind of keep from customers? What passes through, say, a third party who you might outsource some of that work to? You know,
Yeah, no, so it's,
what does that look like, right? Because that's sometimes where we see, we see the issues. Oh, XYZ got compromised, and your driver's license, all the details are out somewhere on the web now. This and that. Even I went into not that long ago into one of our big four banks in New Zealand, and they wanted a digital copy, or they were, oh yeah, I'll go and photocopy that, I'll scan it, whatever document. And I'm thinking, well, where does it, didn't seem to be kind of floating into the sort of repository that you might kind of think about. It seemed like a very kind of manual, like, oh, I'm going to scan it, email it, copy it in some form, and you think, where does this end up, right?
Yeah. So I think in our process, we try to minimize the data that we are capturing, and even then, we make sure that we only store data with us that we as debut need to store. Because there's some regulation that we have to maintain and make. But then it's just common sense, minimizing the amount of data. So we are not capturing any excessive data that we shouldn't be, and using the technology that is being tested in the market. So the system that we use for KYC is actually used by some of the big banks in Australia, a lot of financial organizations here. So they already have built these processes and protocols to make sure that they're privacy compliant, and we are not storing any excessive. Everything is tokenized, anonymized, that sort of stuff. And it's actually going in a very good direction with customer and data bill. There will be a lot more advancement in this area. The data that we store will be stored in more secure formats. Not getting into any technical words here, but yeah, it will be more secured, and people will have more control of their data and what they want to share and what they don't want to share.
Oh, that's really interesting. And you have to go back and re-verify these things over time as well, don't you? You can't assume somebody that signed up with a card, not that you're a decade old, but say a decade down the track, you can't be making too many assumptions. You have to recheck these things along the way.
Yeah, it's good practice in that sense. Yeah.
That's great. So what's next? What's that journey for you to become a kind of a fully fledged bank, as it were? Are we going to see bricks and mortar springing up on every street corner? I'm picking.
The big is again, but building up solution. That is not. It's not. Right now is we are have and do some, that what that does really helps engaging the community, and it's working where have we got keep the product in that way, and services where can differentiate, and where the customer of where they have been gapped by stuff. So I guess that's the long dream is to build up a choice here in New Zealand, where Bangalore have with smart license and everything is kind of means to get there.
Yep. Is there a minimum age to open an account?
At the moment, 18.
Okay. Cool. That's really really fascinating. Well, we'll look forward to sort of following the story through, and really hearing around what is next over the coming period. Any comments that you wanted to sort of share before we wrap up, sort of around the recent report from Commerce Commission around what's happening in the banking world. What is sort of the summary of your thoughts there, without us spending an hour delving into it?
Yeah, sure. Now there are no surprises in that report for us, and I think there's some real benefit of thinking or looking at open banking with a fresh perspective, and it shouldn't be just about the regulatory. For the purpose of regulation, it should be for the benefit of the customer. There's a huge difference in that. So I think that's kind of an area where there probably needs more work. But other than that, there were no surprise in the ComCom report, and we really welcome better regulation. There has to be regulation. The whole, it's about people's money. There has to be rules and regulations and ways to do things, but there can be a better mechanism to let new entrants innovate and launch their products in the market, and provide value to the customer within the kind of risk sort of profiles that. So work to be done. We're definitely looking forward to seeing more progress in that direction.
Yep. Well, it'll be I think a bit of a journey there, right? And when it comes to banking and the finance world, things do tend to move at a slower pace. But it's great to see you stirring things up and trying to move things ahead at a faster pace, where that's probably quite helpful. So good stuff.
Cheers.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us here on the New Zealand Tech podcast. We'll of course be back again next week. If you've been watching a live stream, then of course well worth making sure that you are following us across on your audio app, be that sort of Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. And of course, if you're listening to the audio, then you can also find us on your favorite sort of video apps. And quite often during the year we will be streaming live, as we have done today, across on LinkedIn, which is probably a main platform. You can follow myself, Paul Spain, on LinkedIn to get access to those live streams, and you can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and X. So our X stream has moved to my personal account, Paul Spain. Just to do with changes there in the way that X works. So look out for that. And on YouTube and Facebook, those should be under NZ Tech Podcast. So that's us. Big thank you to our show partners, Spark, HP, 1NZ, and Gorilla Technology. All right. See ya.
See ya.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.